Bridget Murphy, Chief People Officer from Nando's. Welcome to the Future of Employee Experience. I'm very excited to chat to you today.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on.
Great. So before I ask you all the ins and outs and your insights around employee experience, I want to know a little bit more about you. Where are you from and what shaped your journey to landing an employee experience?
Cool. So I have been in the HR function for over 20 years. I haven't been sort of an employee experience expert for that long. It's my view that employee experience is a sort of a relatively new concept, and that a lot of organizations, I think, are really sort of dabbling with and grappling with in terms of what does this really entail. I have a team of 4 who manage the employee experience journey for Nando's South Africa. But we can talk a little bit around them and what they do. But so have been sort of this faculty for over 20 years. But this is a relatively new concept for us all, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you enjoy most around employee experience and the move from traditional HR into this space?
That it really is truly about the employee experience. With my Nando's hat on, we deem ourselves a youth employer. And so that really what that means is you're not necessarily going to work in a Nando's restaurant for the rest of your life. But our intention is come and work for us, as a youth employer. And in that period that you are with us, we would like to give you the best experience so that when you leave, and you go off on other adventures, that you can say you've had a really good experience as an employee at Nando's South Africa.
I love that.
Creating that unique experience so that there's a legacy, and when I leave here, I always have that as a frame of reference
or as a benchmark. If everyone's done their job well, then hopefully that becomes the benchmark for their future career. And tell me, if you look at employee experience, and as you've said, it is quite a new field, and there's a lot happening there. I think, if we look at the last few years, and I mean, there've been so many different challenges that employee experience leaders have had to cope with, none of which were anticipated. What do you think, if we look into the future and we say, like, what are the big trends in employee experience that you need to have a look at this year if you're advising other professionals?
Yeah. So I think if we look backwards, and we had to find ourselves in the COVID-19 pandemic, and really had to sort of catapult a lot of the activities in this space. So that's sort of backwards looking, and one of those factors would really be around employee wellness. And all facets of wellness. And I see that continuing into the future. So I do see issues around mental health continuing, around physical health, around spiritual health, around financial well-being, as continuing into the future, and equipping our leaders to support our employees in these facets. So I don't see that changing. I'm in fact seeing that sort of exasperating into the future.
Okay, and in terms of supporting employees in these different ways, do you see that being like built into their day-to-day, or do you see that being part of learning and development, or how do you see that sort of support playing out?
Oh, yeah, that's cool. Now, I definitely see that as part of day-to-day. So it's not a sort of a standalone item or activity or on the HR calendar. It really is how we treat and deal with our employees, every single day, and it should really be hardwired, if that's right, into all your practices.
So, what do you think are the kind of non-negotiables that leaders need to be focusing on at the moment?
Sure. I think that's sort of a whole leadership conversation, but really I think the flavor of leadership has to change. If it hasn't, already through the COVID-19 pandemic once again, but we need leaders that are far more understanding of these types of matters, leaders that create trust within the workplace, leaders who are trustworthy, leaders who show their own vulnerability, quite frankly, show up as humans. In terms of managing our employee experience very differently. So, sort of the very old school micromanagement concepts, managing through presenteeism, bums in seats, all of that has changed. So it's a significant shift in sort of leadership capability that is required into the future too.
I think that's very true, and I think there's a kind of a mind shift change as well around around inclusion and making things accessible to everybody and considering different channels to do that. I overheard one of your other talks where you were talking about how you use your radio station to
Heatwave radio.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Because I love that. I think inclusion is a big problem that we see. Like frontline people are not being included in the employee experience. It's really like a head office only in a lot of organizations. So I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So yes, we do make use of various communication platforms. Heatwave is our radio station. It broadcasts every single day prior to the restaurant opening up. And each day of the week is themed around various, topics. On a Wednesday, for argument's sake, is the Learning and Development Day. And I'll have a guest speaker on, or one of our non-dockers, which is our staff, talking about their own sort of leadership and growth journey. So each day is planned and themed insofar as that. And it's very, very well received. It's played on the radio in the restaurant. So even if you're busy cutting tomatoes or cutting cucumber or preparing, the kitchen for the day, you're able to hear what the conversation is about. Going back to sort of employee experience and the focus around wellness. We have a doctor, a medical doctor that gives tips and advice around all matters of sort of health-related stuff, et cetera, et cetera. So the radio station is a huge platform for us. In fact, and it's not aired in our head office, so it really is ideally suited to the restaurant, to the restaurant staff. We also make use of a WhatsApp line where we are able to play video clips, recordings, and it's highly really interactive, that our staff once again can use that app interactively. And then there's obviously there's sort of daily written communications. We have a monthly publication called Perivine, where we produce sort of more intensive content and information for our non-dockers to read. But yeah, the radio station is a big hit for us.
Well, I think that's exactly what you were saying around, bringing it into the day to day. So, it shouldn't be something that sits apart. Employee experience, I think, is often seen as a campaign rather than something that is integrated into all of the touch points of the day. And, you're able to feel included and belong and, feel that you belong if you're able to participate whilst you're still doing your job and still, doing what you're supposed to be doing. So I think it's a great use of a channel.
Absolutely.
And what do you think, off the back of that, what do you think then are the biggest challenges that employee experience leaders are likely to encounter in their career, looking back?
I think to your point, Sally, that we need to move sort of that this is a sort of a flavor of the month thing, and that it is an active campaign and so forth. Once again, with my Nando's hat on, I have a team that's responsible for this, and I think we're quite a progressive employer, and for us, this is not a flavor of the month, and it is not a program or a project. So I think we have it sort of easy, and the business buys into this wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
But I think for other organizations, this may still be seen as sort of in isolation or an internal communication thing that you have to do, or what is the flavor of the month. And it's not necessarily hardwired. So I think it's a journey. It's a journey, and it's a shift, as you say, from traditional sort of HR practices to something that is a lot more defined and focused. But It's not a mature practice across organizations.
Yeah, and do you think that a challenge would be, I mean, do you think getting in other organizations, getting leadership buy-in is a challenge that some employee experience leaders have to face? Or do you think it's generally considered to be important to the business now?
I still believe that there would be challenges in other organizations. I don't think it's not hardwired. It's not yet embedded within practice. I suspect. I speak under correction.
No, it's definitely feedback that I receive quite a lot, is that sometimes employee experience professionals need to be quite good salespeople to get the buy-in.
Absolutely, I think so too. But I think once you've got the buy-in and it's hardwired into your DNA and just like how we do business, I think then it really becomes just how we do business.
Well, I think then the return as well starts to speak for itself. And I mean, I think you just see such huge changes in your in your customer experience and in the entire way, your retention, in your churn rates. I think you just see it in so many different places. It starts to show up.
Absolutely. And if people would just understand that there's a direct correlation, I speak once again with my Nando's hat on, there's direct correlation between your employee experience and your customer experience. There is a direct correlation.
Absolutely. I mean, Nando's is obviously well known for all of your amazing marketing and campaigns and everything, and being a real challenger brand in that space. But when once you've attracted everybody and you've got them through the door and they know what they want to buy, if they are speaking to somebody who's completely disengaged and in a terrible mood, it really, the entire thing falls apart and all that money is wasted, really, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So you say you've got the 4 people in your team, and if you looked at them and just generally around employee experience teams, what skills do you think that future employee experience leaders should learn and master?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question, because I don't think it is necessarily sort of traditional HR skills. So one of the team members is a graphic designer.
Mm-hmm.
So she has no sort of HR functionality or HR capabilities, and we use a lot around sort of the communication stuff, the design, the creativity components around whatever it is that we're putting together, and the messaging that we wish to use. And the other team members have come sort of more from consulting backgrounds, not traditionally HR backgrounds. But yeah, to your point, I don't think it's something you're going to find out of your sort of traditional HR stream. I think you should be looking across, broader skills areas. And yeah, focus groups, understanding what it is that your employees really want. And so what is the composition of a focus group, in this instance. But yeah, it's not a traditional HR capability, I don't think.
Yeah, I think it's I definitely think that cross-functional team is important. And I mean, a lot of people I chat to as well definitely talk about the tech skills as well, and the need to have someone with a sort of an IT data background in there as well.
Definitely tech skills. And so, one of the team members responsible for all our sort of systems and systems integration, our goal management system, which is really our performance management system, and what does our talent data and all of that look like. And in fact, she does coding. So I agree with you, definitely different skill set.
And how would you suggest that leaders incorporate an EX leader specifically, incorporate a diversity and inclusion focus into their employee experience strategy?
Yeah, I mean, that's a no-brainer. Diversity and inclusion should also be hardwired into just how we do things around here, and I don't think it should be something done in isolation. It's really just once again how you integrate anything around diversity and inclusion, around messaging, around content, just how we do business around here. So it shouldn't be a standalone project.
Yeah, just
Makes
woven
sense,
in.
Sally?
Yeah,
It
just
was just
woven in everywhere.
absolutely, absolutely.
Do you focus on that sort of during your onboarding process or anything along those lines? That's kind of a specific area where you say, like, this is how we do business around here, and that if this is not a good fit for you, you should sort of consider moving on. Is that something that you focus on? Are you quite line in the sandy around that?
It's not something we call out from an onboarding perspective, no. Outside of sort of your regulatory and sort of compliance submissions, that's sort of done on its own. But for the rest, it's around showcasing all Nandokas across Namibia, South Africa, regardless of race, creed, culture, background, upbringing. We always say it's the people that make the chicken. So it's regardless of how they look, and it's all about the people, and it's hardwired and how we do things.
Yeah, I think that's hopefully where a lot of organizations will end up, that it does become something that is completely hardwired in, and sort of not even really worth having a separate discussion around, really.
No, so I mean, we most corporates in South Africa have challenges, certainly around a transformed executive committee, and we no different to most corporates in that regard, and that remains a challenge for us. But insofar as the rest of the organisation, it's certainly hardwired. It's how we do things around here.
Love it. And if you had to say there's one thing that you want people to take away from our chat today and implement into their own employee experience leadership, what would be that one thing?
Sure. It's around really understanding who your target audience is. In other words, what do your employees want? What are their needs? What are their requirements? And it's certainly not a sort of a one size fits all. If you sort of look at sort of blue collar roles versus white collar roles, the experience and the requirements would be quite different. So you need to understand it in the light of your employees, and you could do that through focus groups, and how that would look, but it's in the eye of the beholder. So the employee in your case, and what is their requirements. It's not some, I think this would be cool. This is trending in the UK at the moment. It would have to be quite unique and tailor-made to your target audience.
Okay, so I mean that's something that interests me a lot. Is the personalization at scale. Do you use specifically data points around that, or is it something that, as you say, you're using more kind of focus groups and segmentation archetypes? What do you recommend?
Lovely word. Definitely segmentation archetypes. So once again, if you go to sort of our restaurant staff, their needs and requirements are very, very different to sort of our white collar head office staff.
Sure.
And so therefore you do require, customization of sorts to cater for each sort of employee subset within the organization.
Okay, cool. And Bridget, I know you do a couple of talks, and you speak on, I've heard you speak on at CHRO and the likes. How can people that listen to the Future EX connect with you or listen to more of your talks? Is there a specific platform that you use the most?
Sure, Sally. Nothing as formalized as that. It's as and when sort of I've been approached or asked by people. So, but I think stay in contact with me on CHRO or on my LinkedIn profile.
Okay, perfect. I will do that and pop the link in. And thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today.